Today's episode is a little different. If you're a regular listener to the show, you know that usually we hear a story from a regular person about something they've experienced that was extremely unusual. We have over 250 episodes like that. Plane crashes, mass shootings, animal attacks, and lots more. And it's not all trauma stories. We have some happy ones too. But sometimes we change it up. And I have a guest on who has a really unusual job. I've talked to Spence, who's a lighthouse keeper, and Dan, who prepares people for their first time going to prison, and Jen, who works as a professional bridesmaid. You can scroll through all the back episodes and find those and a few more. So today, I'm speaking with Elaina. As a young person, she was hired to work at the Magic Kingdom in Disney World as Mickey Mouse. You know, when you're at Disney World and you're walking around trying to decide if you want to go ride Space Mountain roller coaster or take a break in the air conditioning and watch the Country Bear musical jamboree, and all of a sudden you see standing right in front of you is Mickey Mouse, waving, signing autographs, just making people happy. Yeah, that's what Elaina did. She also played Minnie Mouse and a few other characters sometimes. We talked about how she ended up getting that job, what it's like to wear the costume, what would get you fired, and the celebrities she crossed paths with. And of course, what everyone wants to know about, the infamous tunnels under Disney World. You're going to get all the behind-the-scenes stuff today. And why is this episode titled, Elaina Was Friends with Mickey? She'll explain that too. Real people in unreal situations.
The eerie silence when I walked in, and he's just staring at me.
I was like, hello, like, are you okay? And then I had to tell him it was me.
There was just blood everywhere.
They're shouting, they're screaming, they're being hit by bullets, they're hitting the ground.
And in that moment, I literally thought, this is how I die.
Everything changed then.
And I just thought to myself, this isn't happening.
Every single story deserves to be heard.
I'm Scott Johnson, and this is What Was That Like? How hot is it inside that costume, and how did you deal with that? And that's the most common question that it seems like everyone wants to know.
It is always the most asked question. It is hot, but it is like a different hot, if I could explain. It's like, you know how like the Florida heat beats on you? It's different if you were, let's say, under a rug. So if you were, it's more like a sweltering heat where it's like just kind of sitting around you. It's not direct heat. It feels different, but the amount of time that you're in costume helps alleviate what you're feeling in the costume. So it is definitely hot in there in the summer.
Yeah, I can imagine. Okay, let's talk about how you got started in this. This started when you were 18 and you were in Orlando. What were you doing there?
I had just started college at University of Central Florida in Orlando. So I was 18. It was 1995. I was living on campus and walking around campus, and there was a gym, and the gym had a cork board on the outside, and there were all these different flyers posted, and one of them was, can you dance, or are you small? Which of course caught my attention because I'm 4'11". So I thought, that's interesting. And of course it said Walt Disney World. And, as a kid, you're just like, that would be so cool. So that's really all it said. It might have said something about character auditions, but I didn't know very much. I mean, I just thought that would be fun. Let me try it.
Now, it's curious about the dancing part. Do Disney characters actually dance as part of the job?
The reason they ask if you can dance is mainly because they ask if you can move. So it's more about movement. And eventually, characters can move into, let's say, higher positions where they end up in a show. There's two segments of characters. There's just the characters that you see and sign autographs. And then there's other ones that are in like another department, and they're called entertainment. So the same characters you see on stage are not usually the same characters that you see signing autographs. So I think the goal, obviously, is to bring people in that can move, that can dance, that eventually could move into those positions.
I assume the notice just gave an address and a time and date for auditions. What happened when you got there? How many people were there?
It was a full gymnasium. So the flyer obviously said come on a Saturday or something like that. You got there, and let's say there were probably over 100 people, all different shapes and sizes. Obviously, they were targeting the college kids. We got there and they gave us a number. So it was really like a regular audition. Now, I hadn't really been on a regular audition, so I didn't know much about it, but they gave me a number, and then they started with teaching us a very simple dance combination.
And how did you feel about your performance in that first round?
Well, the first one was very simple. And to this day, I mean, you're talking 30 years ago, I still can remember the first dance combination. They put us in two lines, and at the end of the line were two people that worked for Disney, and you had to skip and do a jazz box, and then you had to snap. Very simple, but you had to do that all the way across the floor as you came up to these two people. And as you came up to them, they would point left or right based on whether you made it or not past that first round. That one was super simple. I was like, I got this. No big deal. So that was the first one. The second one.
You moved on to round two now. Okay.
Round two was very interesting. They brought us out in groups. If you've ever watched like, I don't know, like the Dallas Cowboy Cheerleaders or one of those shows where they like bring everybody out in little groups. So they teach you all a dance combination and then they bring out each group separately. So I don't remember how many people were in that group. Definitely less than 10. They taught us this dance combination that was fairly difficult. And the biggest thing that I remember about it is that at the end of it had this like big fan kick. And and I just remember goofing and being like, I really did terrible on that. I just know for a fact I did not nail that dance, but I remember fan kicking and then doing something very silly, like just some silly dance move, and just was smiling and just being goofy.
When you sent that to me, you said that it was the fan kick that you purposely flubbed.
Oh,
why would you?
Because I didn't know how to do it.
Okay, you were trying, but you just didn't know. Okay.
I didn't know. I mean, I could attempt to fan kick, but I was no dance. I mean, I loved dance. That was one of the reasons that I wanted to do it, because I had always loved to dance. I was no way like a trained dancer. And so no fan kick was not my thing. But I was like, I'll just go for it.
It's not like Mickey or Minnie are out there doing fan kicks anyway, right? I mean, it's not a skill that you really need.
No, that's why I think it was like, what are we doing here? So it was a little much although I'm not sure I knew that at the time, right? Like, I don't think I knew enough about what the characters actually did in the park to know whether or not that was called for or not. So, yeah.
So was that the whole audition, or what happened after that?
Pretty much for characters that are in costume, which I'll refer to as fur characters. There's fur characters, which are characters in costume, and then there are face characters. And face characters are your princesses. They're all the people that usually talk.
Like Snow White.
So that's a face character. Yes. Yeah. So those are face characters. So if you're in fur, that was the extent of it.
You were cast as what you called mouse height for Magic Kingdom. How did you get that news?
They took us, separately to, let's say, offer us the position. I remember being one-on-one with someone. It must have been somebody, just probably somebody in just casting. And they said that they would like to offer me the position at, and I didn't know the difference between, I thought you just got hired. I didn't know there were specifics to you got hired for certain parks. But if you're a Magic Kingdom character, you're a Magic Kingdom character. You're not an Epcot character. So you don't pass between the 4 parks. So I was Magic Kingdom. And then they said, I mean, just based on height alone is which height range you fall into. So it's not like they were going to say to me, you're Donald Duck. It wouldn't work, obviously. I'm not in that height category. So just by nature, I was mouse height.
You were mouse height. Okay. And that's like everybody's dream, right?
I mean, I think so. I mean, I auditioned and had no clue really what I was auditioning for. I don't even think I knew that Mickey and Minnie were that height. I probably thought they were smaller, to be honest. And so when you get that news, I was like, oh, really? I'm actually mouse height? That's super cool. And I feel like mouse height went from about 4'9" to maybe 5'1", maybe 5'2", but 5'2" is a pretty tall mouse. And we'll probably talk about how shifts are done, but if you're back to back, your other mouse that's out there with you, if they're too much of a height discrepancy, it's pretty noticeable to people when one mouse comes out and then the next mouse comes out and they're a little bit taller. So they try to keep you close in height.
Yeah, and I never thought about the height. I've been to Disney World. I've seen Mickey Mouse and Minnie Mouse walking around. Never thought about height. But then now that I think about it, though, it would be kind of weird to see a 6-foot Mickey Mouse, you know?
And of course, the costumes are made for just certain sizes. Same with face characters. Obviously, when you go to a face audition, they're definitely looking for height on those. But yeah, there's duck height, mouse height, chipmunk height, Pluto height, and Goofy height. So that's your 5 heights. And so certain costumes fit in those categories of height ranges.
Now, at the time, you were a college student, and so you would be expected to get to Magic Kingdom to work a shift. Did you have a car at the time?
I did not. So it was my first year of school going to UCF at the time. You could not be a freshman and have a car on campus. And I think, or maybe you had to pay or something like that. But I know that my first year, they did not. My parents were like, nope, you don't need a car. You're going to be fine. So I just got there. It was August. I probably auditioned. I believe that the auditions were probably for a holiday season. They really ramp up their hiring around the holidays. So, maybe it was October, November. So I was already calling back to my parents and asking, is there any way that I could get a car? Because I really need a car because I just got a job at Disney World. And Disney is an hour away from University of Central Florida. When it all is said and done, from driving from college campus to the backstage area, so not just thinking of Disney World right off I-4, the main highway, you actually have to go backstage, and it's quite a ways back there. So it's about an hour drive.
So I guess your parents relented?
Yeah, they did. They were like, fine. I mean, I'm sure they were probably excited and thought it was super cool.
Yeah, it's a big opportunity.
Yeah.
Talk about the training.
Yeah.
First of all, it started with what you call Disney traditions. What is that?
Yeah. So Disney traditions, they still do it to this day. So anyone that becomes a cast member for Disney ends up going through their training, and there's a whole training building, and it's very organized. Traditions essentially is a week-long training to give you the history of Disney and then talk to you about like the specifics of like what you can and can't do. At the time, it was fairly strict. I mean, you couldn't have dark nail polish. Your nails couldn't be a certain length. Your hair had to be a certain way. There was, I don't think, facial hair. It was very strict back 30 years ago with how you looked. They would talk about backstage areas and being a cast member and what that meant. So really just history of Disney and try to make you drink a little bit of the Kool-Aid, to be honest.
Right. Yeah, that's company culture.
Sure, company culture, yeah.
They have a brand to protect, and so they have to
Yep.
be very specific about that. Okay, so then you went into character training. How long did that last?
Character training for most was another 3 days, unless you were mouse height. And then mouse height had an extra 2 days at the end of the week. So the training is a full week, and the first 3 days are regular character training. And then the last 2 days of it are for mouse height.
You said they're very focused on how to move and act. What does that mean?
Well, it's funny. Some people don't even register that the characters don't talk, but they don't. And so a lot of movement training is associated with pantomiming and learning how to emote and do things without speaking. And so the first part of the training is a lot of standing in a dance studio with full mirrors and watching yourself in the mirror as they gave you different scenarios, watching yourself try to do these different things while not speaking. One of the exercises that they had us do is, I remember us standing in a circle and they handed us the top of a trash can, a circle trash can lid. And they passed it around, and one by one, each person had to come up with something to do with this lid, something, and be creative. So some person put it on the top of their head like a hat. One person used it like a steering wheel. Somebody else, rolled it on the ground like a wheel. And so that was the goal of a couple different sessions of trying to come up with creative ways to say something without saying something.
One of the listeners had a question about the underground Disney tunnels. And you first saw those during training, right? What are those?
I believe I might have even seen them during tradition. So Magic Kingdom is built on the second floor. The way that Magic Kingdom was built is the first whole floor is underground tunnels. There's none of the other parks are built this way, but Magic Kingdom is. And the tunnels are essentially just a way for cast members to move unseen throughout the park. Lots of entry and exit points throughout the tunnels to get into the park so that they're not walking amongst guests. The tunnels serve not only that purpose, but there's administrative offices down there. And there is also the backstage areas for, like, say, face characters. They have a makeup room. And then the characters have the zoo. The zoo is where you get your costumes. There's locker rooms down there because in most cases, Disney employees or cast members don't come to work in costume. They get changed in the locker rooms. I'm not sure if it's like that anymore, but that was the way it was then, is that you had to get changed when you got to work. The reason was because there was a pickup place for regular costumes as well. So if you worked retail, that costume still had to be picked up at a costume window. So you never took really those home, not at that time. And that the goal of that was to obviously make sure everybody looked fresh and clean, and they weren't relying on you to iron your costume. Was part of looking nice,
Yeah, it's keeping on brand the whole way through. It's really pretty impressive, actually. Okay, each new trainee got a costume head. What was your first experience with putting on the head?
Well, to be honest, it was terrible. I remember the first head and costume I wore out on set, so actually in front of people. I remember that costume. That was Robin Hood. That one was terrible, and I can go into that of why that was terrible.
Yeah, what made it terrible?
Because Robin Hood's, he's a fox, and his head was super stiff, and his visibility was atrocious. It was like two little beady eyes, And I know a lot of people talk about the visibility, and all costumes are very different when it comes to visibility. Some of them you see out of the mouth, some of them you see out of the nose, some of them you can see out of the mouth and the eyes. Some of the eyes sit too high on the head where you're not even near the eyes. So it appears as if the eyes would be where you're looking out of, and you're probably looking out of the mouth. So his only visibility, because his mouth was hardly open, his visibility was his eyes, and they were close together and they were tiny. Your peripheral vision was like non-existent. And that was my first experience out on set in costume. It was the most scariest thing I've ever, probably one of the scariest things I've ever done.
And so, but you were cast as a mouse. Did you go out as Robin Hood the first time just so they could get you comfortable just being out there?
Yeah, that's right. Because they obviously did not want me out as a mouse. And not that you would screw anything up, but they were trying to just plop us into different areas and way back then, characters were just on the street. I recently went to Disneyland, and they still do that at Disneyland, but at Disney World, they're pretty isolated into certain like character meeting areas. But at that time, when you were in training, they were just like, let's grab you a costume that's in your height range. And we don't want to draw too much attention to you by making you Mickey or Minnie. So let's put you in Frontierland and let's grab some obscure character that not anyone is like rushing to get to. We'll just throw you out in Frontierland and see how it goes.
Yeah, you're getting stage time pretty much.
Exactly.
So now you have talked about how hot it is inside there. Are the heads cleaned like after the previous person used it and sweated in it?
If you think about it, essentially you're sweating inside the head, but you're only touching the headgear. So like the sweatiness of your head, you first of all are wearing like a cloth head cap. And so it's like a cloth beanie that's like tied around the back. So it kind of covers your hair. So that's kind of catching your sweat. So you're always wearing a skull cap. On top of that, you're in the headgear, which is it's plastic, and they pop into the head. So in most cases, you have your own headgear that you pop into each head. So it's your own headgear. It's your own head that has been touching this headgear. Same with the chin strap. So if you do wear a chin strap, which I always loved wearing, which is either like a football helmet chin strap that's attached to that headgear, or in my case, I just loved 2 safety pins and a nice thick piece of elastic. And that allowed me to really feel secure in my head so that I could move around easy. So those 2 pieces were yours. It was my chin strap. It was my headgear. But at the same time, when you went for your shift and you picked your head, which when you went into the area, there were a bunch of like posts on the wall with all the heads. And so you knew that your shift was Mickey. You would go into the zoo and you would pick whichever Mickey head. And there's no rhyme or reason. You'd sometimes look inside them and be like, okay, does this one work well with my headgear that I need to snap in? And so you'd pick the Mickey head. And at that time, there was cleaner there. It was called Stirback Blue. I don't know if that's a real cleaner, but that is what we used. And you would spray out the head, and there were towels there, and you would kind of wipe it down really quickly. And then you would spray the anti-fog on the eyes if you looked out the eyes, which you do in Mickey and Minnie. You spray out the eyes, wipe that down. And then the same thing is when you turn it back in, you were responsible for spraying the Stirback Blue back into the head and then placing it back on the headstand.
The rookie gets Robin Hood the first time. How soon were you actually in a Mickey or Minnie costume out there?
Probably the next day. I mean, it was that. And to be honest, it was very unlikely for me to be in anything else but Mickey and Minnie, because Mickey and Minnie needed to be kind of everywhere. So there are other characters that I did a lot. For instance, from Pocahontas, I was Meeko. He's the raccoon. Miko always did dinner at Liberty Tavern, which is a restaurant in Magic Kingdom. So if I was scheduled that dinner, I would do Miko. Crystal Palace is a restaurant in Magic Kingdom, and that was always Winnie the Pooh.
You were also scheduled for different kinds of things.
Yeah.
From what you told me, like hotel breakfast, parades, stuff like that.
Yeah. So usually what would happen is they would schedule you a breakfast. That would be like your first shift in, which had a terrible call time of like 5:30 in the morning, which meant that a college student was driving an hour from college, so 4:30 in the morning, driving. I remember those days well, sometimes never going to sleep.
Hey,
So
that's show business, right?
right. I remember being so tired on breakfast shifts. So call time 5:30 in the morning, get to the zoo, pick up your costume. So that was breakfast. And then usually there would be like a break in the middle of the day. And then maybe you were scheduled for daytime parade. So even if breakfast ended at noon, you then were sitting around until about 2, because 3:00 parade. So you were sitting around until about 2, when then they bring you back to get you suited up for and it might be a different costume. So you might be doing Mickey or Minnie at the Chef Mickey's breakfast at the Contemporary. And then in the afternoon, you might be Jiminy Cricket in the daytime parade. And then you might be sitting around waiting for the Spectro Magic Parade, which was the light up parade at the end of the day. So it was a mixture, but a lot of waiting around, to be honest.
I understand you were only in character for certain periods of time, and then you would swap out. So were there always 2 Mickeys?
Yes. So there was always 2 of every character. So if I go back to Chef Mickey's at the Contemporary, the shift would include, I think you might have Chip, Dale, Mickey, Minnie, Goofy. That one has a lot of characters at Chef Mickey's breakfast or dinner. They have all day pretty much character dining. Those, yes. So each character has a back-to-back is what they called them. So there was always 2 Mickeys, 2 Minnies, and then you were out on set between 30 to 45 minutes. Usually, if it was an indoor space, like something air conditioned, you probably were in 45-minute sets. If you were outside, usually 30 minutes.
And then there was also what you called an escort. Did you always have one of them with you, and what did they do?
In most cases, going back to Chef Mickey's, there's probably an escort or 2. And they were just always out there in costume, not character costume, but they were in Disney attire, right? With a regular name tag. And they were just monitoring and watching the characters, making sure that nothing was wrong with the character, making sure that, so they kind of worked the room and made sure that you were okay. And they were also there to tell you when it was time that you had like 5 minutes left. So they always were giving you a cue. And then you just did it by your own feeling of like, okay, they said I had 5 minutes left. And then when you thought 5 minutes was up, you would then start walking backstage. So you'd finish up at the table that you were at, and then you just walk back.
So, and when you were there with the escort, did that person speak?
Yeah. So that person they would speak to guests, and they would say, Mickey's getting ready to go take Pluto for a walk, so he's almost done, or something like that. Or if I was trying to walk from the last table to the backstage area, if I was getting caught up with a kid running up to me and hugging me, and I just couldn't get them off of me, the escort was there to be your voice to say, "Oh, Mickey's got to go. He's going to walk Pluto real quick. He'll be right back," or something like that. But otherwise, like, you started to learn, even as a character, to like point at your wrist, as in like, I gotta go, or you point real quick, you put your finger up and to say like, just 1 minute, like just 1 second, and then you leave. And I mean, then it's literally so noticeable when one Mickey goes and the other one is standing there waiting. They're they're right there.
But you don't want to have both of them seen at the same time.
Oh no,
Right.
never,
Right.
never.
What celebrities did you meet?
I had been told that I met quite a few celebrities, but when you're in costume and you are running through a line, you really don't even notice that you're seeing people. So at one point, I had met Meg Ryan, and she was super big at the time, back in the, that was during her heyday. She had come with, I believe, her son, who's an actor now, by the way. I'm in a picture as Winnie the Pooh with them, but I didn't even know it. I went backstage and someone's like, "Oh my God, did you see that you posed with Meg Ryan?" I was like, "No." I was like, "Darn it."
You would have enjoyed it more if you knew,
I
right?
would have. I probably would have played it up more or something, but I just didn't know. And my other one, let's see, I met John Denver. So that one was a special event, and it was some conference at one of the hotels. And he was, I think, a guest speaker at the time. And I was Minnie Mouse, and I walked him in. So we went arm in arm. Now, I didn't meet him as Elaina, so I never really got to meet him per se, but, that was one. And then another special event was Bryant Gumbel. I met him or walked with him into an event. And then the biggest one was parade route at Magic Kingdom. There is a bridge that takes you from the middle of Magic Kingdom, kind of in front of the castle, and over towards the Haunted Mansion. There's a bridge right there, and it's called VIP Bridge. There's some seats that sit on the bridge, and that is where they usually put celebrities when they are in the park and they want to watch parade. It's closed off. No people can walk past there or anything. So I was in the Spectro Magic Parade, which is the light up parade. And the character that I was that night was a Spectro Man. And it was a large ball that was driven by a driver. And I sat on top of the light up ball, and I was this robotic looking weird character. I was all lit up. I had a whole dance routine sitting on the top of this ball. And my ball driver came across the bridge and was spinning me around. And there was always a fun thing with the driver. He would jerk you forward as if you were going to hit somebody. And so he spun me around on the bridge and dropped me kind of forward. And as I looked right in front of me on the bridge, it was Tom Hanks and Tim Allen, because it was Toy Story time. And I was like, that is so cool. So yeah, that was my big one where I was like, oh, that was so cool.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And I've heard some people want to have Mickey or Minnie in their wedding.
Yeah, at the time, it used to be $500 a character, something like that, for them to show up for 15 minutes or something crazy. So, Disney's big into the weddings. They have enough hotels to put together weddings, and they have actually the little wedding pavilion. They didn't have that at the time, but they did a lot of weddings at the hotels. And similar to the event where I went with John Denver, you would sign up for special events. So there was a board that you would sign up and try to pick up shifts. And that's where you would try to sign up for specials. And the weddings were on that board. And I did 2 weddings. One, I was Minnie Mouse, and one I was Mickey. And the costumes are different. So that was what was so fun about doing specials, is that you weren't in Minnie Mouse's red dress with the polka dots. You were in an evening gown that was sparkly. It was so cool to get dressed up as Minnie Mouse, and Mickey Mouse had on a cape and a top hat. And so you got to wear all the special costumes. So that was so fun. And then I'm in probably people's wedding photos at this point, doing the chicken dance. I remember doing the chicken dance and the guests all being like, look at Mickey, he knows the chicken dance.
People just love coming into contact. It's you must have felt like a celebrity yourself.
It really does feel like that. I mean, who doesn't know Mickey Mouse and Minnie Mouse and these characters. And so from the time people are little kids, there's just this nostalgia that goes with it, that little kids are excited to see them. Adults are even excited, and the adults are crying watching their children interact with these characters. And there's just such a magic to it that to this day, when I see my own children interact with them, I am like tearing up, and my kids are just like, "What are you doing, Mom?" And I'm like, there's just something about it that is like so heartwarming and touching. And they really do treat you like you are a celebrity. And you're just little old you inside of there, smiling away, trying to make their experience the magic that they hope it would be, right?
Right. Yeah.
So it took a lot. It took a lot to try to bring that to life for them. And if you had a love for Disney yourself, you just naturally would do it.
Can you talk about when you would meet some of the kids who were there because of the Make-A-Wish Foundation?
Yeah, Make-A-Wish obviously has a big connection to Disney. And in most cases, if a child is coming for Make-A-Wish, they do get a special meet and greet. In some cases, they can ask for the character that they'd like to see sometimes. So it's also considered a special. So you would sign up for those. And in the front of Magic Kingdom, it used to be up in like the town square kind of area. So up towards the train, there's like a certain little area up there that they would bring in the kids and the family. And so it was very quiet and very private. Those were the moments that would really just bring tears to your eyes when you were in costume. And you really wanted to make it super special for them. You wanted it to be everything that they hoped it would be. It's their dream, right? It was their dream to come there. It was their dream to meet Mickey and to live up to that. It was, you wanted to make it special for them.
What more gratifying job could you have than making a child's dream come true?
Honestly, you can't even, it's like, what other job actually makes someone feel that way? Even as adults, sometimes we'd think, oh, I'd love to meet the celebrity that I'm such a big fan of. I'm a super big fan of Janet Jackson, and I just recently met her at a meet and greet. And I was like a blubbering idiot as an adult. You know what I mean?
Yep. Starstruck is a real thing.
Yeah. So that's how it is with these characters and with the kids just staring at you like, I don't even know what to say to you,
We had a bunch of questions from listeners, and so I'm just going to go down here and ask some of these. Any myths about Disney parks that you can bust as not true?
Myths. Probably has to do with a lot of the deaths. There's always like this, people are always like, are there a lot of stories of people dying? And I'm like, I don't really know about all that. That's one thing. The other myth, this is probably not breaking the myth, but there are talks about how the tunnels smell. And the answer to that is they do smell. The tunnels smell, and the tunnels have areas that drip. And there, every now and then you hear the trash being sucked through tunnels. So there are tunnels in the ceilings in the tunnels, and that's how they move the trash. So they are kind of stinky.
So that's a rumor that is true then.
That is a rumor that is true. And there's that other myth of there's always that funny picture of a Mickey Mouse half in costume smoking a cigarette in the back. That is not, you would have to be completely out of costume to be doing anything like that.
Right. Yeah. And that brings another question. What would get someone fired instantly from Disney?
Well, first of all, probably taking your head off in front of anybody. So being coming right off set and not being past the line of visibility and somebody seeing you take your head off, that could definitely get you in big trouble. At the time, we did not have digital cameras and we did not have phones. And so we took a lot of pictures with real old school cameras where you'd have to send your film away. And there was always nervous feelings about doing that if you sent away your film and there were inappropriate Disney pictures on it. So that was always like, you always thought, oh gosh, I'm probably going to get fired for that. And I bet talking, to be honest, I mean, you really should not be talking on set.
Was there ever a time when you, because that kind of thing accidentally breaks the belief of people when they see you in costume. Was there ever a time when you accidentally broke that belief?
So not talking, but definitely a few things. There was 2 situations that I can think of. One was being out on set, and I remember a child being behind me and trying to unzip my mini dress. I remember that one because my escort wasn't close enough by for me to signal them that this kid was behind me. I also couldn't really feel it well, but that obviously is not. Kids are very curious, so they're usually like at your feet, sometimes trying to pick through your shoes to see like, are there people feet in here? So like those kind of things. So that was one. And then the other one is I was at a special event. I packed my costume and I forgot it's like a full head skull cap. It's black. And you wear that usually if the head sits too high, you can see your neck. And so it's always just safe to have that piece of costume in case the head sits high. I did not have it. I forgot it. My head sat high and my skull cap didn't keep my hair contained, and my hair started to drop out of the skull cap and down my neck. And the kids at the event were like, I see hair. And I was devastated. Like I felt terrible. I mean, you're talking 30 years ago, and I still remember feeling terrible that I had possibly ruined the magic.
Another listener asked this: did playing a silent character change the way you communicate with people in real life?
I think it does. I think it really does, because I think you just learn so many skills in ways of communicating non-verbally. I'm Italian. I use my hands a lot. I think maybe I have a natural I have like a natural gift to do it anyway, but I do think that you really are able to communicate better. The more you do it, the more you come up with ideas on how to say things. I had one time I was sitting backstage and they were like, we don't want you just sitting around. Let's go throw Minnie Mouse into Fantasyland. Again, this is 30 years ago. They would never do that now. But at that time, they were like, Elaina, go put on Minnie Mouse. We'll get you an escort and go stand out by Dumbo. And so I came out a back gate and it was like paparazzi. I'd gotten swamped. There was no actual line. The kids started to swarm me and I was backed up against the fence. And I remember, this is kind of to go back to that nonverbal, is I remember I put my hands on my hips and I put my finger up and I was like, wait a minute. And then I took both my hands and I said, back up. And then I put my hands on my hips and I crossed my hand and I said, I will not sign. And I made the pantomime of like, 1 second, I won't do it. And I'm not going to sign. And then I put my hands on my hips. And that kind of connection of all those things that I had to say non-verbally. And then the escort said, ooh, Minnie's not happy. Everybody back up. So then they became kind of your voice. But yeah, you definitely learn ways to communicate a string of things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have to like kids or people to do this job? Or does the costume create enough of a barrier that it's completely different from normal interactions? That's from another listener.
I think you probably could get away with not liking kids, but like there's a part that's like you're making it happy for them. So I remember every time I took a photograph, I was smiling inside there. I thought it emoted out of my body, like my happiness and my excitement. And so I liked kids. I liked entertaining more. So it wasn't always about the kids. It was about kids. It was about adults. It was about being goofy. And being slightly shy and being covered by this costume that had its own life to it, right? That people loved these characters and you just had to be fun inside of it. So for me, I don't think you have to really like kids, but I do think that the costume itself takes on a life of its own that allows you to just, I don't know how you would be in there and not smile, to be honest. Like that, that's so wild to me that how are you not smiling in there when somebody's like taking a picture? It's so weird.
Have you had any children vomit on you, or have you had a diaper explode on you?
No, I mean, most parents are they're watching that. One of the things is, as a character, you can't pick up children. So you're not allowed to, when you're standing, pick up kids. So if you were going to pick them up, you'd be sitting down and then the parent usually has to place them on your lap. So even if you're sitting down, you shouldn't be the one that's picking them off the floor. The parent has to place them on your lap. And it's usually super fast. So no, I haven't ever had anything gross like that happen.
You got lucky. That's good.
I might have gotten lucky for sure.
What was the typical pay rate for this job?
Oh gosh. Pay. Oh, good old Disney. Well, back then it was about $5.25. If you were fur, if you were entertainment, you got paid more, which again, entertainment is the characters that are in the shows or on stage. And then face characters obviously got more as well.
I don't know how that translates to today's dollars, but even back then, this is a position that so many people that want to go into the entertainment industry, they want, but it's obviously not for the money.
No, it is not. It is not for the money. I use it as a comparison. So a lot of us that worked in the entertainment industry in Orlando at the time, a lot of us did like dual parks. Some worked at SeaWorld and they worked at Disney. I worked at Disney and I worked at Universal at the same time. Universal Studios at the time, I was in the Barney show. So I was the yellow dinosaur, BJ. And so to compare pay, that would be considered like entertainment, right? Where the character's not just signing autographs, they're on stage. And that was about $12 an hour. But I remember at that time, that was a lot. Like that was a lot. I feel like minimum wage at that time might have been $4.75.
Yeah, it was something in that ballpark. Yeah.
It was pretty low like that. So at Disney, you thought, oh, I'm making more than minimum wage. Not much. And Disney, at Universal, you thought you were like banking it. You were like $11, $12 an hour. Like, holy moly, 30 years ago.
How long did you work for Disney?
I was there as a character for about 3 years. And then after I hurt myself in costume.
What happened that ended the character job?
I had been doing a lot of Crystal Palace shifts as Winnie the Pooh. Winnie the Pooh at the time was a mouse height costume. Since then, it has been redesigned, probably because of the injuries. I like to always describe the Winnie the Pooh costume. So Winnie the Pooh's head had his shirt, his little red shirt, was attached to his head. So you would turn the head over, you'd put your arms inside the shirt, and you'd lift the head on top of your head. The headgear sat where you looked out his big nose. So imagine that you are now carrying the weight of the eyes, the ears, the top of the head, all sits way above your head. And the only way that you can look out is by the nose. And so in order to sign autographs, you have to push your head down to kind of look. And that strain on the back of my neck and my upper back caused such pain that by the time I had hurt myself so much in Winnie the Pooh, I was unable to hold Mickey's head on, which Mickey and Minnie's head are the lightest heads. Sometimes people will ask that, but they are. Minnie Mouse's head is the lightest of the light, and her eyes are perfectly centered like sunglasses. Mickey's eyes sit further apart, so you have a little bit of crazy visibility in the middle, like you don't really have good visibility in the middle. but still his head is fairly light. I would work Chef Mickey's and I would put on his chef hat on top of Mickey's head, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't bear the weight of that hat, and lean forward again to sign autographs. And so they ended up, I mean, Disney took care of me. They did run me through their own physical therapy. They put me through physical therapy, paid for all of it. I'm sure at some point I signed my life away and signed something that made them not liable for that injury. But they did send me through physical therapy, and then they found me a job at Coronado Springs, and I worked front desk for years. So I overall worked at Disney probably 6 years.
Did having this job on your resume help you later in life? Like, did you continue in the entertainment world?
Funny enough, I love to tell this kind of story because it sounds like I'm making things up, honestly, but I started at Disney. I was in entertainment, and somehow I ended up working for the FBI for 8 years. Eventually, I worked at the FBI and became a trainer and a facilitator and standing up in front of people, essentially being back, quote, on stage. So did it connect? Sort of. I still think it did. I think there's part of being on stage and being comfortable in front of people that translated to later in life. And even to this day, being the mascot at my kids' previous elementary school, I still do that and occasionally jump into that costume. So
that must bring back a few memories, being in costume in front of a crowd of people.
It really does. And I swear, like, the kids, they just love it. And that's not even like a celebrity character, but these elementary school kids, when they see Whiskers the Wildcat, they are so excited. And it really does bring it back for me. I love it. I love it.
You live here in the Tampa Bay area. How often do you get over to Disney World?
Well, I was for a while. My kids were little. My kids are 13 and 10 now. And before that, we were very into it. I think the Florida heat has kept me away, as well as the lines. The lines are, it's just, the experience is a little bit different now, but I'm also a part-time travel agent. And in that, I go on Disney cruises to just see what the product's about. And so that has been an experience for me to see some characters on the ship. And my kids are really big into, Mommy, tell them that you were, quote, friends with Mickey, which is the way that people that work at the parks tell other characters that they have been in costume, is you say you were friends with Mickey, and then the other person knows that you had been in costume.
That is interesting. So you don't want to ever say I was Mickey, because again,
Nope.
that breaks the belief again, right?
That's right. That's right. So you always say I was friends with Mickey, and then on the cruise, that Mickey pretty much lost his or her mind and was like hugging me, and they're getting all excited, and so like there's like a camaraderie between people that have done it. And then recently, actually just this spring break, I took the kids to Disneyland because I am a fan and I am a lover of Disney, and I wanted to see the difference. So I took them out to Disneyland. So we obviously just went to that park, but we don't do a lot of Florida. It's super expensive. It's really hot. The lines are long, and I worked there. So I have been on all the rides like a million times.
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
Final question. Are there any sort of unseen benefits of being a character that maybe people wouldn't think about?
I think besides the probably well-known one of you work for Disney, you can get into Disney anytime you want for yourself. You used to be able to get 3 people in 12 times a year. It was a big perk. I think it's a little bit different now. I think they give cast members tickets, and I don't know how often they do that, but I think it's still one of the big benefits is obviously being able to get into the parks or allowing family members and things into the parks. The other thing is anytime you worked breakfasts or dinners, the restaurants would feed you. So that was always fun because you knew you had the breakfast. You'd go, you'd do your first set, like I said, like 45 minutes, and then you'd come back in and there'd be full breakfast waiting for you. So that was really nice. And like we always, Liberty Tree Tavern was the restaurant, and I used to do Miko there. And they had like prime rib. And so, like anything that the people were eating, we were eating back there too, like Crystal Palace or 1900 Park Fair is a buffet at Grand Floridian, and they always had really good food too. So now think of that. You're like a struggling college student. Yeah, you're only making $5.25, but you're literally in costume 30 minutes just hanging out, having fun with friends, having some dinner. It was the life.
I can imagine. Yeah. I sure appreciate you coming on and sharing this story. I know a lot of people are going to find it super interesting.
Yeah, I'm happy to answer any other questions, but I love talking about it.
I loved this conversation. Obviously, Elaina is one of those lucky people to be able to look back on a previous job and remember it with so much fondness. I really appreciate her for coming on and talking about it. And in the episode notes, you can see some pictures of her in costume. whatwasthatlike.com/254. And I know Disney is one of these huge corporate behemoths that owns hundreds of other companies, but they definitely have cracked the code for making kids happy. Before I talked with Elaina, I went in the Facebook group and asked, what questions would you want me to ask? And included a bunch of them in our conversation. But if there's something else you want to know, Elaina is actually in the Facebook group, so you can ask her directly. Join us over at whatwasthatlike.com/Facebook. And if you like this episode, you might like episode 139, titled Trisha Smuggled Her Dad into Disney World. That's from back in May of 2023. Graphics for this episode were created by Bob Bretz. Full episode transcription was created by James Lai. And once again, we're at the end of this episode, which means it's listener story time. I learned a long time ago that the listeners of this podcast have some great stories of their own. So you are invited to record a story on your phone. Just something interesting that happened to you that you can tell in about 5 to 10 minutes. And email it to me, scott@whatwasthatlike.com. This listener is someone you may have heard before, and she's talking about her birthday. Stay safe, and I'll see you next time.
My name is Haley. I'm not only an avid listener of Scott's podcast, but I've recorded an episode. Haley was saved by a friend is my story, if you'd like to listen to it. But today I'm calling about a question you recently asked, Scott, which is, do you value your birthday, or do you celebrate your birthday, or something like that? My story is a little interesting because on my 35th birthday, I decided to go to the movies and ended up being involved in a mass shooting in Aurora, Colorado. That was obviously detrimental for many reasons, but also the fact that it happened on my birthday made it very interesting because I had always enjoyed my birthday and I had always loved sort of being Queen Haley for a day. It's my day. It's my birthday. I can ask for whatever I want. I can plan whatever I want. I can do whatever I want. I can do nothing and nobody will argue because it's my day. It's my birthday. And then something terrible happened on my birthday. And I thought, how am I ever going to get over this, let alone enjoy my birthday again? And fast forward, I did get over it, not get over it. I did move past it. And I did find many ways to enjoy my birthday again. And the biggest thing was just the perspective of celebrating my life and celebrating that I get another birthday and that I have another birthday. And it really shifted my perspective from it just being my day to being joyful and grateful for every day.